The Tampa Bay Lightning made some interesting roster moves before the first game of this 5-game Lightning homestand that begins. On today's episode, we'll break down those moves, the upcoming homestand, and talk about what the Lightning can do to get one of their offensive stars a bit more involved in Lightning offense. Welcome to Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Lightning. Josh Sperber here, thanking you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, then this is the show for you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there is no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the FanDuel app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. And we will get started with the most important event of the upcoming day, probably maybe week. That can be argued, certainly, but the Lightning rematch against the Chicago Blackhawks, a 4-3 overtime win thanks to 3 points from Nikita Kucherov, including the game-winning goal, helped the Lightning in Chicago. Now they're looking to make it a season sweep when the Blackhawks return to face Tampa Bay. Now, once again, the power play and penalty kill will play a big factor here, but it's really the offense, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next segment. I think there is a player that the Lightning need to get a bit more involved in their offense that who has not had as much success over the last couple games of the Bolts have been accustomed to him having this season. That's Braden Point. Again, we'll go over that a bit more in the next show or in the next segment, but I think offensively is obviously a point where the Lightning have an advantage. You're playing a Blackhawk team, which are in the bottom two in terms of goals allowed per game and goals for per game. Meanwhile, the Lightning lead the league in goals for per game, are 10th in goals allowed. So, the basic score more goals than the other team here always really applies. But, the fact is, the Blackhawks didn't have a full answer for the Lightning offense last time. They got out to an early lead in that second period after the Lightning scored the first goal. The Blackhawks then scored 3 straight. Then the Lightning put up 3 more to end it. So they're just it's hard for really any team to play a full 60 minutes with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But the Lightning already saw that the Blackhawks couldn't play for the Lightning for a full 60 minutes. And even for overtime, it was just a dominant Lightning performance in that as well. They really dominated in terms of shots, 40 shots, 14 on goal for the Lightning compared to the Blackhawks. So that's an anomaly, I think, that if it happens another game, it's going to be a much different scoreline, still in favor, though, of the Lightning. The Lightning really controlled who had the better chances. They got more shots. They got better shots, and the Blackhawks just capitalized a little bit more in regulation. The Lightning were able to get it done in overtime with the only shot of the OT period. But really, I think the Lightning need to play defensively, especially the way they did the last 2 periods. I'm talking the third period and overtime. Holding the Blackhawks to 1 shot after the second period is beyond impressive. And if they can replicate that kind of success, that kind of defensive prowess for any amount of time, they should be pretty golden, honestly. But you can't judge a team on paper, and you certainly can't, assume any kind of loss. This is going to be a Blackhawk team that might not be contending for a playoff spot, but they're still a young team, still trying to show people that they're on their way up. Still 1 point ahead of the Sharks, though, with 3 games in hand for the worst record in the league. So, no one's expecting the Blackhawks to do anything crazy here, but, it's still not a game that the Lightning can write off. Plain and simple. You've got to play to every opponent equally, and you got to treat every game the same. But it probably does make the Lightning feel better coming off of a tough loss, coming off a game that I feel like a lot of the Lightning players and coaches said that they probably should have won. And certainly a game that I thought that they had their chances in, and you can mention probably 5 of those over the course of the month of January, where the Lightning had their chances to win, but they just couldn't close it out for one reason. Excuse me, for one reason or another. And now, this is that Blackhawks game. The game the Lightning played in Chicago was an example of the Lightning had a chance to close it out, blow it. I mean, whatever it is, but they came alive later in the game, and they got themselves back on the right track, and they earned themselves a victory. But you still look at this schedule: 1-goal games against the Sharks and the Kings, an overtime loss against the Devils, which they had an early lead. They were up 2-0 against the Canadiens. I mean, you can look at 5 or 6 games in the month of January alone where the Lightning just couldn't close it out, or couldn't hold on to their lead, or couldn't get to a lead. But that's something that I think the Lightning should definitely do. I mean, getting an early start, getting out ahead is always something that benefits Tampa for the most part. If they take the lead first, they just don't give it up. Obviously, the Blackhawks are an example of that. The Lightning got the opening goal, and then the Blackhawks scored 3 straight. That is, it happened a couple times this season as well. But if the Lightning get off to a fast start, they can usually hold on to the lead for the rest of the game. And I think getting that good start and holding that lead early on at home is definitely going to be key to victory against the Chicago Blackhawks. But we talked about the importance of power play and penalty kill. These are two teams that are just about top 10 in both of those categories, with the Blackhawks 11th in the league in penalty kill percentage and 9th in the league in power play percentage. The Lightning 4th in power play percentage, 81.9. That's 8th in penalty kill percentage. So this is another time where the Lightning have an advantage in both elements of special teams. This is the special teams, though, I think is where the Blackhawks have been at their best offensively, particularly on the power play. But this is just another area of the game that the Lightning just need to control. When they get out to a fast start, they control special teams, they don't lose those games. And those are two things that they're going to want to do against this Blackhawk team that played the Lightning pretty close in that last one. Those three straight goals between the first and second period for Chicago certainly put a dent on Tampa. They did face Jonas Johansson. They will likely be facing Andrei Vasilevsky instead. The Lightning might be facing a different Blackhawks goalie, but the goalie depth for the Lightning compared to Chicago is staggeringly in favor of Tampa Bay. Soderblom faced the Lightning last time. He is 6-11-3 with a save percentage of .906, goals allowed average just under 3, and Mrazek is the regular goalie, 9-17-2. In next game will be his 30th game, goals allowed average at .326, save percentage just under .900. I mean, those are goalies that, obviously they're not bad goalies. You got to be a certain high quality level to be an NHL goalie, whether you're starting or whether you're a backup. You're still getting some NHL minutes, so you still gotta be something. But those are two goalies whose numbers don't jump off the page and certainly don't intimidate any of these Lightning offensive players. But the Lightning coming off of a shutout game, you're gonna want to get a big explosion. And knowing that these goalkeepers are there for Chicago that really aren't game-changing goalies like maybe an Andrei Vasilevsky might be, could give the Lightning just a little bit of an edge. That it's not the same level of goaltender that they normally face. And again, these are NHL players. They might be thinking about this completely different than I would. But, you just don't know. And I think that the Lightning certainly won't be taking the Blackhawks lightly. I think they can no longer afford to do that. They have lost too many games that, frankly, it seems like they should have won over the course of this road trip. But now the time has come for a big homestand to really right the ship. You've got a couple of playoff teams coming to town, a couple of teams that you think you should beat, and then it ends with 2 back-to-back divisional games that are nothing short of crucial, which we'll go into a bit more next week against the Ottawa Senators. It's the Blackhawks and Kings this week, Islanders next week, and then the 2 games against the Senators in the first full week of the month of February. But I'm predicting another Lightning win. I'm saying 5-1 over the Blackhawks. I think that the Lightning are really going to come out swinging. They're going to want to make up for and atone for the fact that they were just shut out by a divisional team, and I think they're going to take out some of their frustration on this Chicago Blackhawks squad. And I think this game is going to look something reminiscent of that 8-1 win over the Sharks at Amalie Arena back in December, for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think this is going to be a big blowout, and I think the Lightning are going to come out on top. If you think differently, if you think the same, make sure to comment your score below or send us a DM on X at @LO_Lightning. But until then, we're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about how the Lightning need to get Brayden Point a little bit more involved in this homestand if they want to pick up some more points. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the Super Bowl action. With live betting all big game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. And the live betting feature set lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, and that's just icing on the cake. So download the FanDuel app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. And if you're looking to bet on hockey, you should know the Lightning are pretty heavy favorites over the Chicago Blackhawks. Over-under set at 6.5, which is favored to hit. And the Lightning are favored on both a money line and a negative 1.5 spread, according to the FanDuel Sportsbook. So make sure to get your bets in for that game even before the Super Bowl. Get a little practice for the big game on FanDuel.com. We're back here on Locked On Lightning, and this is something I didn't really think I'd have to say. I think Brayden Point needs to get a bit more involved in the Lightning offense. And it's certainly not for lack of trying. You know, he's the first-line center, usually one of the first players on the ice, usually one of the longest tenured offensive players on the ice for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But he has not scored in the entire road trip. And I think, first off, just getting Point a goal marker in the first game of this 5-game homestand, a homestand that ends with two huge divisional matchup, I think would be the exact right thing to just get the Lightning going. Because Brayden Point is obviously one of the best players on this Lightning team, and certainly a big reason that the Lightning are where they are. He's one of the better players on the team, person that is well-respected, well-liked in the Lightning locker room, and obviously they celebrate his success, as usually common as it is, and his success has been quite fruitful for the Lightning over the course of the season. He is Tampa's leading goal scorer at the moment with 27 goals, top 5 in the entire NHL in terms of getting close on the goal scoring lead, closing in on some career highs. Brayden Point has been excellent, and the Lightning would not be in the solid position that they are without him. I don't want what I'm saying now to sound in any way negative or trying to take anything away from Brayden Point's game, because I'm a huge fan of the way he plays. I think he's a great player, and I think he's one of the better centers in the entire NHL. But, 4 straight games without a goal from your team's leading goal scorer is not something that can fly at this point in the season. Even Nikita Kucherov has 4 goals fewer than Point. Only Jake Gensel has above 25, along with Brayden at 25 exactly, 0.2 ahead of him at 27. But Kucherov's been great. Gensel has been great in this month, but you want to have the entire first line just singing like it usually is at the midseason point. And over the last 5 games, Brayden Point has notched 2 assists. That is it. He has also a plus-minus of -2 over that 5-game stretch. And the last positive game of his in terms of plus-minus and the last goal came in the home win against Detroit on January 18th. And he could have had a couple more in that game. That's a whole different argument. But I think it would just be a big momentum boost to have Point score early against the Blackhawks and really help the Lightning in their push as they try to get back into a more comfortable spot in the position. And again, with the games in hand, the Lightning and the teams in front of them have 3 games in hand on the Bruins and Panthers, 4th and 2nd, and 2 games in hand on the Senators and Maple Leafs, 3rd and 1st. And by the way, the Ottawa Senators come to Amalie Arena in the first week of February for 2 games of a 5-game homestand. And with the playoff position looking the way it is right now, those games look even more crucial. And you're going to want to have Brayden Point, get hot and get back to the elite goal scoring form that you can get from him. He's 9 goals away from 300 in his career in 623 career games. That you can list off the stats. You can, list off his performances and playoff games and key regular season games. I mean, what have you. Brayden Point is such a huge part of this Lightning club. And with the passers, the willing passers that the Lightning have on each wing of that line, especially, it honestly is surprising when he goes this long without putting a puck in net. Again, still the 2 assists. So it's not for lack of trying. It's not like Point is just, disputing his contract and away from the office and just not really caring about it. No, he's just definitely a team player and certainly knows he's a key offensive guy and wants to put the pucks in net. Just they haven't been falling lately, and that's kind of been the way it's gone in some of these Lightning losses over the road trip. And I'm hoping that just returning home is exactly what Point is going to need to get himself back on track, because especially at this point in the season, when divisional games are starting to get that much more important, when Eastern Conference games, frankly, are starting to get that much more important, the Lightning need Brayden Point hot. So I think in order to do that, I'd like to see some defenders, pushing up, helping with the offense. You see a lot of that, particularly on Victor Hedman's line. Him and Darren Radish are probably the Lightning's 2 most aggressive defenders in terms of getting on the offensive side of the puck as well. And the fact that they're with Brayden Point's line quite a lot can certainly help. But, you've got a lot of passers willing to get him the puck, but maybe it's something where you design some kind of play or whatever to free Point up in the middle, because that is where I think he is best at, when Point is just kind of free in the middle of the ice, just looking for loose pucks to throw on net. Because as I've said 100 times over, and I'll keep saying 100 more times over, there's no one better in the NHL at picking up loose pucks and putting them in the net than Brayden Point. He's the NHL leader in backhand goals. I mean, just a guy who's got a really quick shot from in close. And, whether it's just keeping him close to the goal, screening the goalie, just getting around the net, just looking for those loose pucks off of rebounds, off of tip passes, what have you. I mean, that might just be a good place to put Point in a little bit more. Set him up for just some more shots. Over those last 5 games, Point only had 14 shots. One of them going in against Detroit. There's an argument he could have had a couple more goals in that game as well, but that's neither here nor there. But regardless, I think 14 shots in 5 games, that's almost 3 shots a game. That's a little lower than the average you'd like from a starting center. And it's not like the Lightning have made it difficult to get shots. Just maybe it's about getting the right players the right shots rather than just shooting an open look as soon as you have one. But the Lightning still are, they make up the best offense in the entire league, and having Brayden Point, his fully healthy and fully active self on the ice is a key component in making the Lightning's offense as potent as it is. And it has really showed what Brayden Point means to the Lightning team over these last couple games on the road. They were able to come back and scratch one out against Chicago, but a point goal really could have made a difference in a game that was clinched by an empty netter in Toronto, and a game that was clinched by an empty netter in Detroit, and a game that was decided by 1 goal in Montreal. I mean, having the more Point gets the puck, I think the better opportunities the Lightning will have as a team. So I think getting him more involved, getting him some free space to roam in open ice on side, I think is exactly what the Lightning need with Brayden Point. They really need to try and maximize him and use him to their biggest advantage against Chicago. Point did not have any goals against the Blackhawks. He'd have 1 assist against Chicago in Chicago. So hopefully he can replicate at least the point scoring and help the Lightning put one in net. And by the way, you look at those last 4 games of when he had points, it was the 2 biggest scoring outputs of the Lightning road trip when Braden Point had either a goal or an assist. He had an assist in the 4-3 win over Chicago, and he had an assist in the 5-3 loss to Toronto. But Braden Point getting on the board is usually a reason the Lightning are on their road to victory in a lot of times. So certainly hoping to see Braden Point light the lamp at Amalie Arena when the Chicago Blackhawks come to town. And ahead of that game against the Blackhawks, the Tampa Bay Lightning made some interesting roster moves, and we're going to explore the meaning behind some of those moves when we return here on Locked On Lightning. Welcome back into Locked On Lightning. Now, roster moves, particularly at this point in the season, are pretty commonplace, but I wanted to talk about these ones because kind of hard to get in my head. Max Crozier was recalled to the Syracuse Crunch later last week. And before this game, Declan Carlisle and Gage Gonzalez will make their reappearance in Tampa Bay Lightning uniforms. Declan Carlisle is one of the 3 Lightning defensemen. Actually, I think he was the second of the 3 Lightning defensemen that have been called up from the AHL Syracuse Crunch over the course of this season. Of those 3 AHL defensemen that have come to the Tampa Bay Lightning, Declan Carlisle has been most successful in terms of putting points on the board. He finished with a +1, the only defender to do so. Both Santini and Crozier finished with an even 0 in their plus-minus, and he scored his first NHL goal, did Declan Carlisle, in his Tampa Bay Lightning and season NHL debut. Carlisle signed undrafted, played 1 game in 23-24, 1 game in 24-25 after he was signed as an undrafted free agent by Tampa in March of 2022. Now, Carlisle, his move makes a little bit more sense. Emil Lilleberg went in front of the Player Safety Committee of the NHL regarding an interference penalty that came in the second period of Saturday's loss to the Detroit Red Wings. It was determined that interference penalty required further action, as Emil Lilleberg was suspended for 2 games, meaning he will miss the 2 games this week, Tuesday against the Chicago Blackhawks and Thursday against the Los Angeles Kings, priming him for a Saturday return on the 1st of February against the New York Islanders. So Declan Carlisle, an easy slot into that third line. I mean, the only question there is why bring Carlisle back up when Crozier had just been up? Why not just keep him there? I think, the Lightning had Chernak back. It seemed like they were at their regular status quo for when it came to defensemen. But obviously the Lilleberg suspension necessitates the addition of another defenseman. I think it's honestly plain and simply just to get Carlisle some more action. He's only played in 2 NHL games. In Crozier's second now stint in the NHL, he's already played 5. So he has definitely played the most action. Santini has been in and out of the NHL since making his debut for 1 game in the 2015-16 season with the New Jersey Devils. So it's not like they need to see that much more of him, but you look on the Crunch roster, and Carlisle and Crozier seem to be the most advanced prospects when it comes to the Lightning defenders. I know I've talked a lot about Derek Pouliot as a defenseman being among the Lightning league leaders or the Crunch league leaders in scoring over the course of the AHL season. I certainly think he deserves a look, but I think at this point the Lightning have a comfortable enough position where they're really in control of their own destiny for the most part in terms of a playoff spot right now. I'm not saying that they could afford to back off or let their foot off the gas, because that wouldn't be true. But they can afford to, if they, in a pinch like this with a surprise suspension or an injury or something like that, the Lightning don't have to look for a guy who will necessarily make an immediate impact and, do everything that any team hopes that a rookie can do, getting back up to the NHL or, getting up getting up to the leagues or getting some time with a big club after a season in the AHL. I think it's the Lightning are in a space where, yeah, if they need a player in a pinch, they'll still need him to make some kind of impact, but they can. It doesn't have to be a game-changing impact. It can just be, a solid line filler on defense that'll keep the puck out of the net. And, now's a time where you want to see the Lightning trying out some of their prospects, and Declan Carlisle deserves another look. I think Crozier does. And at this point in the season, with the Lightning already having made a prospect trade, you can't really you don't really know who's going to be going. You don't know who's going to be getting traded, and this could be this could very easily be a situation where there's another team in the NHL looking to make a trade with the Lightning. All right, we've got a chance to try up some guys up on the NHL level. Declan Carlisle is a guy that this team may or may not have been asking about. Why not give him another look, and you guys can see what you like. Maybe the Lightning get another play out of it. So with Declan Carlisle, 24 years old, a game in 2 separate seasons of NHL experience, he could be a guy that the teams would be that teams could be interested in. Obviously, that prospect trade were 2 forwards, so that doesn't really affect much. And you don't think that it would have to be some making room, but Gage Gonzalez joins Declan Carlisle, returning to the Lightning for the first time in 2025. Gonzalez has actually spent as many or more games in the NHL than he has in the AHL so far this season. With the Tampa Bay Lightning, Gage Gonzalez, after making his career debut last year, Gonzalez has played 26 games this season with a goal and an assist for the Tampa Bay Lightning this year, playing mostly on the 4th line forwards and getting some time on the 3rd line as well. 26 games with the Lightning this season with the Syracuse Crunch. He has had a couple more assists. He was among their assist leaders with 6 at the time of his initial NHL call-up. And now Gonzalez is 7th on the team, or tied for 6th on the team with Joel Teasdale, tied with 14 points. 4 goals have him 10th on the Crunch roster. However, his 10 assists have him tied with Nico Huhtinen for 4th in 11 games. And Gage Gonzalez, I think, is a trickier situation because, frankly, I was initially concerned that the Lightning called him back down to Syracuse, but at that point there wasn't that much room on the roster. At this point, unless there's an injury that we don't know about, I don't see where there's even room on this roster for Gage Gonzalez. Maybe it's just filling the extra spot with Carlisle taking the suspended player spot, and there's just an open roster spot now. I don't know, but I'm not sure why Gonzalez is coming back. I mean, he's been praised by Julian Breezebaugh and other Lightning management about his work ethic and his disability and his improvement, his progress on the ice. Has made great strides at both the AHL and NHL levels over the course of 2024 and 2025. And it's clear that Gonzalez can play. He can hang in the NHL. I just didn't think the Lightning really had space for him. So it's going to be interesting when we see the lineups for tonight's game against Chicago, where the Lightning put him. It could mean that Cam Atkinson is back in another injury spell again. He's unfortunately been on and off the scratch list with a couple of nagging injuries over the course of the season, and it could just mean that he's got one that is a little bit more serious and Lightning need a quick spot. But honestly, it's kind of tough to decipher, and this also could be another trade thing. Gage Gonzalez is certainly a player that I could see a couple NHL teams, particularly younger NHL teams, willing to trade maybe a 2nd or 3rd round pick to take a flyer on a guy who's got some NHL experience. He showed that he can play, but the Lightning just might not have space for on their roster right now, especially since Isaac Howard from Michigan State is coming up very soon. And given the way he's been playing in Michigan State, and B, with the amount of praise that has been heaped upon him by top Lightning brass, I don't think he's going to spend too much time in the minors. Gage Gonzalez has obviously spent a good amount of time and certainly seems like an NHL-ready prospect, but the Lightning don't have space on their roster for him right now, so he had to go back down to Syracuse. But Julian Brisebois said that Gonzalez is definitely going to come back hungry. He was certainly disappointed in getting sent down after a spell of almost 30 games in the NHL. But now is Gonzalez's chance to prove once again that he belongs with the Lightning. And I think he certainly does. It's mainly just a matter of space. But it's interesting to see Gonzalez and Carlisle called back up, even though Carlisle is likely to be a 2-game call-up until Lilleberg's suspension is over. But I'm curious to see where the Lightning put Gonzalez, especially in the fold against the Blackhawks and over the course of this 5-game homestand. But before we get to the rest of the 5-game homestand, we're going to bid you adieu for the day. Josh Sperber again, thanking all of you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And whether on YouTube or on another podcast site or program, please give us a like, a comment, subscribe, a follow. Really just we appreciate you guys supporting our show because we do the show for you guys, the fans. So we hope you enjoyed another episode of Locked On Lightning. Thanks again for tuning in, and go Lightning. I'll have updates from the stadium on our X account at LO_Lightning. That's LO_Lightning. Follow us on X for in-game updates tonight and for the rest of the week. And we'll have another episode recapping the action against the Blackhawks and a whole lot more tomorrow. Until then, once again, go Bolts and have a great start to your week.